Okay, compañeros, welcome to another edition of the SQL Data Partners podcast. I am Carlos Chacon, your host, and I'm joined by a couple of cohorts today. We have Eugene Meidinger.
Howdy.
Mr. Kevin Fiesel.
Hello.
And Miss Tracy Boggiano.
Hello.
So Tracy is dare I say, an old friend. No, that's not the right word. No, well, definitely an old friend, but what's the word I'm looking for? Man,
And not nearly as old friend as Carlos first intimated.
I'm not that old.
Not that old. No, a stalwart, right? A stalwart of the program, having been on episodes 102 and 149, and we're glad to have her back. So welcome, Miss Tracy.
Thank you.
So today we are going to be talking about mental health, mental wellness, right? And particularly focused on the IT crowd. I know that you have been, both you and Eugene actually have been talking about this. And so we thought, hey, we should include this in the program. And so we're glad to have you. So let's see, it appears that we are going to dispense with our shout outs for today. So let's go ahead and jump in, right? So I guess a little bit of background. And one of the things that has always impressed me about your background is your commitment to helping foster kids. Right, so you have a long legacy of helping kids out.
I did year 18 and 56 kids.
Yeah.
In that time span, so
that's commendable, right? You've told me about some of the stories, and I'm not sure if this will connect, right? But in terms of trying to go out and find kids, right, bring them back, make sure they're safe. All those pieces I've been very impressed with, with your efforts there. And so we appreciate you coming on and talking to us a little bit about it. So I guess let's just go ahead and jump in there, right? Maybe let's start with, so why is this?
My cat's making an appearance.
Hey, there we go. Nice. Live, we got the cat here. Very good.
Every time I'm on camera.
Yeah. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about why is mental health important, and talk us through, right, some of the issues that we're currently facing.
I'd like to hear the cat's perspective first.
Well, I think she's happy now because she's licking the inside of a bag of white Cheetos.
Well, that makes sense.
Now she's back on the keyboard though. So.
Oh, great. So now we have the rebuttal.
Her white Cheetos. Now she's back. So, but at any rate, I started doing this talk before the pandemic, but then of course, with the pandemic, things made mental health in general worse. But before that, I've had a lot of issues with things happening at work. And personal things as well, because I do have bipolar, anxiety, and PTSD. So I have my own issues, plus then work piling on top of it. So it just occurred to me that maybe, I looked at some statistics when it came around the general population and IT, and I've seen IT's higher than the general population when it comes to the percentage of people that suffer from mental health issues in general. Just they get depressed and anxiety from different things that happen at work. So I decided to put a talk together about it. My first time, it only lasted 30 minutes. That's what happens to me sometimes. But I was nervous, because
Sure.
I was putting my personal business out there a little bit. The second time I went better at an hour, and then now I've done it like nobody picks any other talk I put out there hardly. If I put it in a conference, if I put like 3 tech talks and mental health in there, mental health gets picked every time.
That's interesting. Well, it's funny, right? Just kind of jumping into that, right? So expectation settings. Now this is perhaps a slight tangent, but there's a great talk. So BYU does these devotionals, and There's a great talk on comparisons and, and expectation setting a little bit, right? And so, we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves, right? Because of how we compare to others. We're constantly comparing ourselves, right? It's like, right, I'm not doing well because they're doing so good, right? And that can be a tough road to hoe.
Yeah, we compare ourselves against our peers. We see, people on Twitter these days doing, whatever on their jobs and speaking and getting the jobs we would wish we would have and doing things that we want to do or in our own workplace, just seeing someone get a raise when we thought we should have got that promotion and things like that. I mean, I've trained people that got promoted before me. So, that type of thing happening doesn't do very well to your mental health and your self-esteem when you're working at some place and you're doing such a good job, but you're not rewarded for it. So those things kind of weigh on you some. So, you just kind of like that makes you depressed in of itself to a certain extent anyways.
Sure.
So
the whole social media aspect can be very challenging, right? As we, and we talk about social media and, everyone presenting the best version of themselves, right? And so, it's I go on a trip or I go do this and, again, you're seeing everybody else's best version. And then again, kind of going back to that comparison, comparing it to where you are. And
my dad is the world's worst at that, just so you know.
Yeah, was that right?
Yes. He has the perfect life.
Hey, somebody has to, right?
Yeah, somebody has to. But then you look at Twitter and it's just all over the place. So I've got
hot take. Twitter is a cesspool, and the less time you spend there, the happier you are.
But there's a trick to Twitter. You can do muted words on Twitter. And Tracy Lemire actually has a published list of muted words on GitHub. Mm-hmm. Basically takes out all your political stuff, all your, violence and things like that. And like my Twitter feed's great now. It's from like 2017 or 2018, but it's great. So like when a new election comes around, I just add in the new presidential candidates, take out the old ones. Well, except like maybe one of the ones that was just in. I don't want to name names and make it political, but
sure.
But I do that just so I can keep my Twitter feed down to the things that are more important. And if I see things that are happening more that I don't want to see, I might add, some muted words to keep it more focused on SQL and the things I want to see that people are doing in their lives and things I would care about that they might be complaining about too, So it's a great list. I actually tell it in my presentation. I need to put a link to it. I keep forgetting to do that.
Sure. So I mean, to that point, right? It sounds like one of the pieces, and maybe we're jumping in, right? Tell me if we need to change here, but it sounds like one of the combatants that you have taken to help with mental health is to cut out stuff, right? That's not helpful.
Yeah, I don't look at my dad's Facebook that much. For one thing, or Facebook in general, just because it is so positive. And then if you think about your own life, it may not be as positive. Like I'll just be honest, I was out of work for the most of June because I had a bipolar manic phase, and I needed time to recover from that. So I was out for all but like maybe 5 days. So switching meds around and getting all that situated, and I might have worked 5 days in that month, and so I was on medical leave. So that's my most recent occurrence of having a bout. So and I stay off social media as much as I can. Twitter's probably the one I go onto the most, but I mostly use that for DMs more than I do anything else, just because I have so many SQL family friends there, and that's the best way to reach them.
Sure.
SQL family friends are great.
Yeah, they can be, right, for the most part. Until you get into that thing, right? Who's doing what, right? Who's,
and that's why I DM them and don't look at
Right.
the other part.
Yeah, the family drama.
You
I
never
don't look
know
at the
what's-
99% of Twitter. I just look at the 1%. That's not terrible.
It's like I can't convince people to get onto AOL or get onto AIM. So
Well,
you're in
I
Twitter
get
DMs.
people sometimes they'll ask me what's going on with so and so. I'm like, I don't know. I don't watch Twitter. I just contact you during DMs.
Twitter
So,
is the crappiest soap opera.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there, and you're just like, and everybody likes things or retweets things, and you're just like, I don't care about all this stuff. So
Now, I don't have any metrics to back this up, but it feels like, it seems to me, at least in, right, quote unquote news, right? I'm talking about traditional, right, cable network, right, type. It feels like Twitter is the most prevalent, like, source of information, which makes me feel a little weird.
at 280
Yeah.
characters, yeah.
That's right.
And go back to my comment about this being a cesspool and apply to what you're seeing.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah.
they're part of the cess, or they're causing the cess, I should say.
Sure. So, okay, so we've talked a little bit about, right? So the social media aspect, right? What are some other areas that that might affect our mental health that we have to be on the lookout for?
Well, I think one of the most important ones at work is just getting burnt out. Or part of life too, because it affects your home life. Working extra hours constantly, doing the same things repetitively at work, and especially when you're in development, which we all are, writing code and doing the same things over and over and over again, and hopefully we're automating it, so we're not. But we're on projects sometimes where we're having to work 11, 12-hour days, and the more hours we're working, the less we're able to concentrate. And according to studies, the more, if you're working like 55 hours a week, the more you do that, it actually leads to dementia later in life, according to one of the studies I found. So it's kind of like, we need to cut back on our hours so that we're not doing stuff like that, and make sure we're getting breaks, and trying to keep closer to the 40-hour work week as much as we can. So, but just burnout is kind of like the biggest thing. There's a website, I think it's called burnoutindex.org, and when I first took it, I didn't think I was burnt out. Evidently I am. And I would just declare I'm always am, because if I was at that point, I probably just am always.
Yeah. So, Eugene, I know that again, you've been talking a little bit about this, right? So what's your thoughts here on sources and what we need to be on the lookout here for?
Let's see. I mean, burnout's definitely a good point. I think one of the things that's a challenge is we can, at a certain point, internalize a certain amount of negative self-talk as normal, right? If you've been dealing with this for years and years, and I something that I noticed about myself is, like, I would expect myself to be perfect, never make mistakes, and then whenever I did, I would be extremely critical, as though that was like, this guy with a whip just trying to get the horse to go faster or whatever. And I think that was something that I realized, that, like, a lot of the self-criticism, self-negative talk, all this kind of stuff, you can get used to it after a while. It can be like you're out on a patio and it's these mosquito bites, and you don't think about each individual little one, but it sounds silly. I have a tally counter in my pocket, and so far this morning I've had 0 automatic negative thoughts, which is a win in my mind. But I started actually, like, counting it, and on bad days I'd have like 40, and you can just imagine, if you got 40 mosquito bites in a day, you would be like, I'm buying every citronella candle I can find, right? So I think a lot of the self-criticism, especially whenever in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's this idea of cognitive distortions, and a lot of them apply. So, like, black and white thinking, Like if I screw something up, like I'm sure there's been times where I've sent an email and we've had misunderstandings. And if I look back at that and say, oh, I'm a failure, I'm taking a tiny little part of who I am in my work and I'm making it all or nothing. Right. So I think a lot of this self-talk can be a real issue.
See, I would take that and think I'm getting fired. I take it completely catastrophically
Sure.
to the other end.
Right.
So I just, I completely just say I'm gonna get fired for over just the littlest of mistakes.
Yeah.
And
Carlos hasn't fired me yet, thankfully.
Yeah, I'm just, I have a lot of the negative talk and stuff, and I have friends that are trying to help me turn that around and do self-care more and stuff like that, and
right,
and not have those thoughts all the time and stuff. But it's
yeah,
it's been a number of years, let's just say. I mean, I grew up that way. I was taught that, so
sure.
There's a reason I volunteered with foster kids, because I was taught to. I should have been one, so, and I was taught to be that way. So,
yeah, that's tough, right? Because I feel like I mean, now in my mind, right, process improvement is a good thing, right? Just using Eugene's analogy or his example, you send an email, there's a miscommunication, right? I feel like it is positive to reflect back and be like, okay, well, how can we make this better?
Right.
But I think where the line or the challenge is recognizing that there can be improvement without undermining yourself and saying, right, like, I am incapable of improvement, or I
right.
This mistake is is worthy of separation, things like that, right?
But you're supposed to be able to learn from your mistakes, but that's what people say. You learn from your mistakes, and that way you don't make them again. But not in my thinking. I try to think that way, but then I'm overly panicked until I talk to the person that calms me down and doesn't fire me. So.
Let's see. I lost my place here. So then, yeah. So I guess I'm looking for coping mechanisms here, right? Then, so you've mentioned talking to somebody, right? You've mentioned eliminating, sources of information. Talk to us about some of the ways in which you try to, help yourself, right?
Yeah, I have a number of those that I try to use. Just some basic things like trying to get out and get some exercise, because that gets your endorphins running, positive endorphins running. Trying to eat healthy, making sure I get enough sleep. Sleep's very important for me. I try to keep the same schedule and sleep, because that messes me up if I, even on the weekends, if I don't go to bed at the same time and I sleep in late, it messes me up. So. Sure. Those things are some easy things you can do to help yourself out. I try to do some meditation in the morning. It's only like 10 minutes, because it's about as much as I can do before my brain starts wandering all over the place. You might try out some yoga or some other type of thing that's close to meditation, something that can just calm you down and be peaceful. It's kind of hard to do stuff like that when your brain spins on these type of things.
Right.
My hardest thing too is getting away from my computer. I'm kind of addicted to it. So you need some sort of hobby. I know Eugene has hobbies. I've seen it on Twitter.
Oh yeah, no, during the pandemic, I realized that I did need a hobby. There was a great video on YouTube called Spaceship You, and the whole idea was like, what if you were sent in a spaceship by yourself for a year, which we all kind of were, and one of the things was having a creative space. So I've been doing miniature painting. You talk about getting away from the computer. I have these cues at my work computer to force myself to have those boundaries, and so I literally have a batch script scheduled at 6 p.m. that just runs like shutdown /T 5 minutes. And so at 6 p.m. when I'm getting off the computer, it's like, we're going to shut down. I'm like, okay, I guess I should leave my office. And then my lights, which I have lights that I can like control the colors and stuff. And they turn just the sickliest green whenever it's time for me to stop working. Let's see if I can, hold on. I might be able to get it. Yeah, here we go. That's the color it turns whenever I need to go on my lunch break or I need to quit for the day. So I've tried to add little automated nudges for those days where I'm not like, I don't have enough brain power to do what's always healthy, you know?
Yeah.
All right, that is disgusting. Let's get that back to a normal color. All right,
Yeah.
there we go.
It's not easy being green.
Yeah, I've stuck in my calendar like the word break and a reminder every hour during the day, just so I can get up, walk down the stairs, walk down the street, and back up the stairs, just to get some fresh air. Of course, when it's raining, it's like, do I really gotta do that? Do I gotta get up?
I've got one better. I have, again, just MacGyver kludges. I've got a VB script that runs every 30 minutes for not only like Pomodoro break, but like an exercise. So I have a list of exercises and it gives me the next one out of it. And at least I do some strength training during the day.
I'm gonna have to get Eugene to send me some stuff.
I can, yeah. I should write a blog post, honestly.
Yeah, you should. You're better at fixing these problems than I am. I'm good at giving the advice.
I don't know. I feel like I'm half butting everything right now. I think I said that on Twitter, and then Carl's like, "Are you okay, Eugene?" I'm like, "Well, you know."
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't post much on Twitter, because everybody be asking me if I'm okay right now. I'm like I started posting on Twitter the other day. I was like, no, delete.
Right.
I get too many messages off that post, so I just, I gotta work on hobbies though, because like the shutting down the computer wouldn't work because I'm working on a pre-con right now, so I'm just gonna go to my personal computer and work on that. So I have no choice but to be on my computer pretty much all the time right now.
Sure.
Because I can't work on that during working hours, so I've got to work on it after hours and juggle a few other things in life. So
we want to get in here really quick. So Andy, right, is chiming in with a couple of pieces and put up a video, I believe, of the spaceship U. So for those who want to check it out, we'll make sure that gets into the to the show notes. Anyway. So interesting to see what, I guess, Andy, what did you come up with in terms of the spaceship U? Let's see if I can get that in real time. No, he stepped away. Or I'm not getting anything anyway. Okay, so what are the interesting things, right? So you just mentioned, June, right? You had this issue. You were gone for a while, right? So one of the questions is, one of the thoughts was, okay, so how can work help, right? Or
that's the tough part right there.
Yeah. So what have been some of your experiences, and perhaps maybe the question is what have been the conversations you've had to have in terms of conversations with your employer, right? To kind of make that happen.
You technically don't have to have a conversation with your employer because it falls under HIPAA, but I have an understanding boss. So I had a feeling the week ahead of time it was coming. So I kind of gave him a heads up that I was in a mania state because, the fact that I do this talk out there everywhere, and, his boss knows because he's seen it on LinkedIn and, sent me a message telling me how brave I was for doing it, blah, blah, blah. And, so it's out there. So it's like, so I gave him a heads up that I was doing it. He asked me what that meant. And I was like, I'm not sure yet. So, because I wasn't sure if it was going to calm down by itself with just a med change or two, or if it was going to, explode into something bigger. And then it exploded into something bigger. So, I filed the paperwork with HIPAA and got leave of absence, short-term disability, and all that stuff, so that I'd get, at least partly paid. I've had previous experiences where there was no way in heck I was going to tell my boss anything, because they just would not understand a thing about it. And I've had places where just me being out of work for like taking a week's long vacation was gossiping about me having an issue when nobody knew I had any issues. So it was just, things like that, make you not want to talk about it at work. And there's, statistics on the fact that people don't want to talk about it at work. And, because it's not considered like a physical element, like, diabetes or cancer or anything where it's, hey, I got this, physical condition. But mental health is just as important as a physical condition, and it should be treated that way, and it should be able to be talked about that way. And it's not yet. And that's why I wanted to start talking about it, is trying to get the stigma out of it, at least in our industry, because that's where I have the influence at. At least get it in the data community, get it out there. I did get to talk at a PHP conference about it, so I got a little bit on the developers.
Nice.
Red Hat gave me their keynote at a conference.
So what is the message then that you see in terms of like getting it out there, right? Is that, just the idea that it exists? Like, what is it that you're hoping to, or what is the message that you're trying to convey through those sessions?
I'm hoping mostly to, at this point, to make sure people know they're not alone in the fact that they're suffering from a mental health issue, and that they can realize what things may be causing it at work. And if they're having these issues at work, like some of the stories I tell about things I have at work that have happened to me are horrendous. And if you're having these things happen to you that are causing you this much stress that aren't related to like directly to your job, like, I had this one job where, we had this guy who had a Playboy calendar up in his office. Somebody reported it.
Oof.
And HR just let him put a sticky note over the offensive part. I had a coworker that, I was away from my desk, something broke, I came back, he was just yelling at me, what happened? At the top of his voice. I'm getting yelled at for something I wasn't even at my desk for. I've had things, just horrendous amounts of stories that I can tell about, things that happen at work that are, me being bullied and pushed around, and, the sexual harassment and things like that shouldn't happen in a workplace that aren't related to your job directly. Plus, then you have the stress of the things that happen to your job directly, where, you got your email on your phone, your Slack on your phone, or whatever messaging app you got, which we should all delete those unless we're on call. And get your phones.
Yeah, I know that's a real problem. So on the the business side, so admittedly, that's where I've been trying to do some studying and get better as an entrepreneur, right? Trying to figure out some of those pieces. And there are some articles out there. There is I don't know if movement's the right word, right? But some of the advice is starting to come out that you've got to get rid of, even if your high producers are toxic, right? You've got to get rid of them,
Right.
Because they're overall, right? Again, to use the old analogy, right? One bad apple, spoils the bunch, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think one thing too that I've heard people saying is to put in your signature of your email, just because I send this email after my hours doesn't mean you have to respond to it. Because the team I work on now goes from the West Coast to Australia. So my boss works in Seattle. So I'm in the East Coast. Well, now my boss is in Chicago. I just switched teams, but it was she's on leave, so technically he's still in Seattle. But anyway, I'm confused on bosses right now. But he's in Seattle, so anything after 5, he's working to 8. So I don't need to be on my phone responding to him. But one thing he could put in his signature, or anybody could put, is, you don't have to respond after hours just because I'm sending an email after hours. That way, you kind of cut back on people checking their emails and set that expectation so that people aren't trying to be online and responding to things. And I know with Slack, I set it to where I get no notifications, because I don't know if you guys use Slack, but you have the thing where you can set it to sleep during your off hours, but then they have that notify anyways thing. And people at work were using that. So I set it where I get no notifications at all from Slack on my phone, and I have to choose to look at it on my phone for work, because they kept using the notify anything at like 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. It's like, I'm on the East Coast. I'm not looking at whatever you're sending me for a test project. Plus, even if it was prod, I'm not on call. Pager duties, how you access me.
Right.
Period. So it's just like, quit hitting the notify anything. And I told my boss about it after he got back from vacation, and he went around and ain't nobody done it since. He must have found out who was doing it, told him to stop. But it's just like, you got to get that balance where you're not always constantly looking at your phone and always on and doing stuff, which is, for work, it's hard to do, because you're wanting to perform and get things done, and there's a lot of work to be done.
So Andy suggested one option, which again, a little bit of effort involved, but Andy suggested that the delayed delivery feature in Outlook can be helpful, right? From an offset perspective. So if you're dealing with different time zones, right, you can still send it. So in terms of, right, kind of getting it off your plate, or I don't like that word, but in terms of like moving it forward, making sure that you're taking action on it. I have used that before as well.
Unfortunately, we're moving to Gmail. I wonder if it has the same thing.
There is, yeah.
Is it?
Yep.
I'm not looking forward to moving to Gmail. We're ditching Office and everything.
Oh gosh.
Going to Google Suite.
Yeah. Is that why Dr. Heinz been invited to speak at the at the conference this year, right?
It's like we're like,
it was last year. I think they were like the cover. They were like one of the stories, right? Anyway, I digress.
I don't know. It's just like they change things around. It's not the first major software change we've had, so
Sure.
it's just like, but Google Sheets. Ooh. That's my major problem.
Yeah. Okay, so right, we've all been there, right? And even in our families, right? I know that there are certain things that when my wife gets into a certain way, or when I'm in a certain way, that I don't want her to say to me, right? So what are some of the no-nos, right, when it comes to trying to help folks with that are suffering from mental health issues?
I got a long list of those. You want the list of what not to say to people?
However you want to tackle it, right? Or so maybe how about
whichever list is shorter, I guess.
So I don't know if not this, but that, right? Kind of a thing.
Well, it's just I've just had a lot of people just say simple things like pull yourself out of it, or pull yourself together, when they should be trying to see if there's a way they can help you get better. Like, can I help you by taking you to the doctor and double checking to make sure you're taking your medication, seeing if you want to go for a walk or go do something fun, just trying to get you outside your bubble rather than pushing you in by saying something that's negative. Because saying something that's snappy like that, that is just not realistic when somebody's, depressed is not helpful. I think one of my worst ones, like two of my worst ones, is I've had people tell me I don't need medication. And I'm like,
geez.
And I'm like, do you really want me to stop taking my medication? And this was right after I got out of the hospital in 2018. And I was like, do you really want me to stop taking my medication? They took it back. And then I had a relative of mine tell me that PTSD was for weak-minded people. That was just like, I'm like, okay, that was my father.
Sure.
Yeah, who's been to like 4 wars because he's 25-year Army vet. So evidently he has a strong mind.
I would hope that nobody listening to this podcast, like, that's their baseline. You know what I mean? Because that's pretty bad.
And then I've had people, I go to church, I'm Christian, and just tell me to pray about it. They think I'm not putting enough faith in God to heal me. And I'm like, yeah, I've had these problems since I was a teenager. I spent half my life, to be honest, thinking about suicide a lot, because I wasn't on the right medication. And it wasn't until they diagnosed me with bipolar and got me on mood stabilizers that I, got to where I wasn't doing it most of the time. It still comes and goes, but it's just like, to try to say, just because you have faith and you're not praying, your way out of it doesn't mean it's just going to go away. It might, but that's when they told me not to take medication. I was like, but, it's like, but then, how do you, then it might not work. And doctor wouldn't like that. So let's not do that one. And then,
those are tough conversations to have, right?
Trying to get people to understand things is really, really tough, especially people that don't understand mental illness. I've had a friend who really asked if bipolar was a real thing. So then they did some Googling and told me how much I needed to exercise. So
sure.
That was her answer to everything.
Like anything, right? It is such a personal experience, right? So we're greatly influenced by the experiences that we've had. So, right, the way, either whether that's recognizing it, whether that's, hey, you put that stuff away, right? Like, we're not bringing that out, right? You gotta, choke it down, right? Let's, kind of pull through this, or whatever the experience is. Or if you have someone, right, that's that's family member, or whatever, close friend, whatever that is, that's had some of those issues, and you've been in an opportunity to talk with that person, right? It changes your perspective, your experience. And I think it is challenging because we naturally default to, okay, well, kind of what works for us.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this works for me, right? So then it should work for you. And I think, I think it's so generally, right, well-intentioned. But
I just think they default to what they know.
Sure.
And they just didn't know. So I'm their mental health educator. That's the way I took it to be. So she's came a long way in understanding things in the past 3 years. So. But it's been a struggle.
Yeah, to answer maybe the more positive side of the things to do or things to say, I think that one of the best things that you can do is just not try to fix anything immediately, right? There's another link for the show notes. There's a video called "It's Not About the Nail." And I watched this like 7 or 8 years ago. And for me, your stereotypical guy, it was revelatory, because like up until that point, if someone were to tell me about a problem they were having, my intuition is to start a brainstorming session. Like, all right, well, how are we going to fix this? Right. and realizing that that's not always helpful. Like it can be at times, but I learned from that a lot of times to ask my spouse, like, okay, you looking for solutions or you just want to vent?
Recording
Right.
in progress.
And so I think a lot of times the first thing that you should be doing is validating how they're feeling, like, yeah, that sucks, but then seeking to understand what's going on and what they're feeling and what they're dealing with. I think that should definitely be the first thing before, all the anti-patterns that were listed of saying, oh, well, you need to exercise or stop taking meds, or you need to do this, or, oh, well, you're just not trying hard enough. Like just seeking to understand and being able to tolerate someone else's suffering, being able to tolerate things aren't fixed right now. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I got listed under the what to do is just to listen non-judgmentally to someone. Right. And it's okay just to listen and not have anything to say back besides, I hear you. You don't have to, do more than that. And be patient with somebody, because sometimes they don't want to like tell you everything all at once, or it's going to take them a while to, open up to you and things like that. So you don't want to push them into anything either. So, you usually notice when someone's mood changes if you've been around them enough. So, you can ask them how they're doing and try not to push them and be patient. But when they're ready to talk, just listen and be there. And, and if you, think the problem's serious enough, just be honest with them that you think they might need some help that's, beyond what you can give them. So, and I think everybody probably needs a therapist at some point in their life, but that's just my personal opinion. Not necessarily for depression or anxiety, but sometimes you got something you got to talk to somebody about.
Sure. So that's an interesting, thought. So I just read, so it's called The Motive, and what is Patrick somebody? Let's see, Patrick. Oh, here we go. And what's interesting is, so the book has nothing to do with mental health, but it's more about, so Patrick Lencioni, anyway. But he talks about, it's a leadership focused book, and, and basically why you lead. But one of the interesting things that he says in there is that people need to be led, right? And generally you think of like the boss, right? I go, well, hey, I am the boss, right? I don't need to be led. But you see so many of these bosses have coaches or or therapists, right? Like there's somebody else that they are, I don't want to say giving control, but allowing in, right? And kind of involving in that communication process. And I thought, and he makes the point that the idea of being involved with someone and helping them, that management process, it doesn't mean doing every single thing, right? But asking where you are and being involved with that process is just good, just good management, and that people generally want that, right? And so it is, I think, the same thing applies, right, to a therapist type relationship, is that it can be helpful, right, to walk through that and kind of, hey, this is where I am, right? What do I need to do, right? You're looking for an outside perspective, and I think that's why it has been, it can be so helpful.
Yes, right? And most therapists see a therapist.
Sure, no, that's right.
Because they need to unload what what they're listening to too. So that's just things that go on. I mean,
so I know we kind of dived in pretty quickly to the I don't know, so some heavy, right? Some heavy hitter examples, right? But one of the things that I think is perhaps, I don't know if it's to consider, is that I feel like everybody has these issues at some point, right? Whether that's like, I mean, I know, so my own experience, I'm like, you know what, I need to get out of here for a second, right? And so I used to work with a buddy, Jason Coates, and we would be like, hey, is it milkshake time? And we would walk across the street and go get a milkshake, right? And so that was just our way to kind of, break away, right? We'd talk about whatever, our families, what have you. And so it was a bit of a nice diversion. So obviously, so Eugene's talked about his, the lights or,
Right.
whatever it is. So part of the challenge then is coming up with a system, right, that then works for you. And unfortunately, you may not be able to find that on Facebook in terms of, right, what one person does may or may not work for you, right? It doesn't mean that you can't try it, but it may mean that you need to go through a variety of different things before you kind of figure that out.
Yeah, I'm working on hobbies, trying to find one.
Okay.
I'm trying puzzles at the moment.
Interesting.
So far, it's not going well.
Not going so well, huh?
I haven't even found all the outside pieces and put them together yet. It's been out 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, maybe not starting with the 300,000 or the 30,000 piece puzzle, right, Tracy? Right? You might need to,
It's only 1,000 pieces.
Only 1,000 pieces. Okay.
So.
Still, some of those can be tough.
Okay.
Okay.
I forgot what it is by now because I hadn't worked on it in a few days.
Sure. So, Amanda, hopped in and said, right, so a therapist can help you realize when the thoughts you're having aren't reasonable or true. So almost kind of going back to Eugene's, right, the self-deprecating talk, right? Sometimes you kind of, you're like, hey, this is what it is, what it is, right? This is, and so talking through that with someone can help escalate that or bring a different perspective, right?
Yep. I just got balanced out this morning with my therapist, so.
Okay, there you go.
I had a rough week last week, so.
And I think it, so I don't believe we've ever brought up religion on this talk, but I dare say, right? So for me, right, this is where I know we had a bad example. So religion get a bad rap because there are bad apples, right? And there are people that are, we all say the wrong thing at some point. But I also feel like that's another place to get a little guidance, to get a little balance, right? Think about something a little bit bigger than yourself and kind of just, hey, are my thoughts in harmony, right, with what I know to be true, right, from my religious upbringing or where right. I am. Those can be challenging conversations to have, but I have found them helpful in my own life.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with praying about it. It's just the way it, they said,
right. It's like here, in terms of.
And then my pastor's actually done a wonderful sermon on it, the difference between having spiritual depression and it actually being, a physical element, making sure there's people know it's two different things. Right. And not, just a spiritual thing that you have that you got to pray about and fix yourself.
Sure, for sure.
So he did a really good job about that in the last year or two. So I was really impressed because every time I've ever heard a depression sermon, it's always been spiritual. It's like, yeah, that's not. So he was like, it's a chemical thing. There's some of you that have chemical things, and some of us have spiritual things going on. So
sure.
So that's always been, a good way to separate the two when it comes to religion. So.
Okay, so I guess we've kind of we've talked about several different things, right?
Yeah, we've been all over the place.
Yeah, we've been all over the place.
And Kevin hasn't talked much.
Nope.
Yeah, so I guess final thoughts here.
I mean, my final thoughts are that a lot of this stuff is more tractable than you think. Like I'm not going to pretend that I have it all solved, but at the same time, just like with trying to be physically healthy, there really is a lot of things that you can read about and do and enact to take better care of yourself. And so I think that was something that I found encouraging, just to realize how much stuff is within your control to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Like I said, making sure you get the exercise, eating healthy and sleeping, just the three basic things alone for me make a big difference. I mean, I notice every time I miss hours worth of sleep, it affects me the next day.
Sure.
And it doesn't throw me off, too terribly bad, but you do enough of it and it will. And then I find journaling very helpful as well. Trying to, he may use his little clicker thing for his bad thoughts. I use my journal. So that way when I go to my therapist, I can see how many repetitive bad thoughts I had that were the same thing. And sometimes what I do is I write the thought and then I just I'll put a little tick mark beside of it how many times I had it in the same day. So it's sort of like what he does. I just know what the thoughts are. Right. More so because I've got them written down, and then I can go in and we can try to discuss them and try to figure out how we can, try to, figure out that they're really not there. They're not realistic. They're not what we need to be worrying about.
Sure. Okay.
Do we want to discuss any more of the workplace stuff, or did we cover most of that?
So I mean, I'll defer to you there, right? I mean, I think it's it sounds challenging, right? I mean, obviously, easier said than done, right? But I think you've shared experience.
We did cover a lot of it with the burnout and the stress and stuff, and the bullying and the sexual harassment. So that was my main categories and stuff. So I just didn't know if we wanted to tell more horrifying stories. Maybe Kevin and Eugene had some.
Nothing off the top of my head, but I think we're starting to come up on time anyway.
Yeah. I mean, no. So again, easier said than done. One benefit that we do have being in IT is that for the most part, IT jobs continue to be prevalent. And in the U.S., so again, my perspective, right? So jobs in the U.S., right, particularly even in the data sector, right, which is our focus group. So, if it comes to that place where you feel like the structure of the management is not supportive, right? Unfortunately, there's a little bit of onus on you to go and find a different place.
Yeah.
Right?
After I did my presentation for the WIT Day of Mental Health, during the middle of the presentation, somebody tweeted out that if you're hearing Tracy's stories and they sound familiar, you should look for another job using the SQL family. I need to put that in my slide deck. I've got a print screen of it on my personal computer, and I need to add it into my slide deck as a disclaimer. You're going to hear some horrifying stories. So just in case, this is how you find a new job.
Yeah, it's almost like, again, like this is not normal, right? If this is not, acceptable, right?
Not acceptable behavior at all. Like I said, my presentation I gave on the WIT Day was probably the best version I gave. So I managed to remember more horrifying stories that day for some reason than other days.
Yeah, well, it can be tough, right? And but I think, right? So again, compañeros, right? You are valuable. We enjoy having you here. Wherever you might be listening from, and so right, we're all gonna have tough times, but we hope that this conversation has been encouraging. Where if you feel like you're in a rut, you're not sure where to go, but it's giving you either some ideas or the confidence to seek some new ideas, right? To try and get yourself to a better place.
Yeah, and reach out to somebody to talk to. There's several people in the community that you can talk to. Feel to DM me on Twitter. My DMs are open. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. Point you to some other people that have said they're open to talking to people confidential about issues and stuff. So
Yeah.
SQL Family's got a number of people that have tweeted out that they would do that. So just in case you don't want to talk to a woman, you might be a guy and want to talk to a guy. So
there you go.
You know, give you equal access.
So should we do SQL Family?
Sure, I'm ready.
So this is not your first rodeo here, but we have changed up the questions, right? So
Yes.
what advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
Just constantly be learning, because everything is changing.
Sure.
Even the Agile porter changes every day.
Yeah, that's right. You're like, what the heck?
VS Code gets updated every week.
Yeah, now I should have asked this in the main section of the body, right, or main section of our conversation today. But what's one thing that can instantly make your day better?
Well, I like sitting out on my new screened-in porch with my cat and drinking a hot tea with milk in it. That's what I do every morning.
Okay.
Before I start work.
Very good.
Even if it's hot, like outside.
So you have $10,000. What computer or tech are you going to purchase?
Well, see, that was a hard one. So I was thinking I would get all kinds of recording equipment, but then I want a pure storage array, but they're not 10K.
You have to add a little bit more to that number, right?
So I was like, man.
Argenis and be like, hey, Argenis, Carlos.
I'll talk to Marsha. I'll talk to Marsha. Me and Marsha are better friends than me and Argenis. So,
okay,
say, Marsha, can you give me a discount? But maybe some better recording equipment or something, for the house and stuff.
There you go.
I mean, I got decent recording equipment, but and definitely a better laptop. So.
Which famous person in history would you want to spend the day with?
Robin Williams. He's not too far back in history, but he was my favorite actor.
There you go.
Well,
okay.
Sure.
Had his own, mental health
issues, and I really enjoyed his acting, and I've read his newest biography and stuff. And I started it when I was in the hospital in 2018. So
okay.
After they gave it back to me, they took it away from me when I was first there because they said I couldn't have hardback books. And then it took them 2 days to give it back to me. They let me in with it. Silly people.
Tracy, our last question for you today. What's your favorite ice cream topping?
Caramel.
Caramel, huh? Okay. On top of what ice cream then?
Usually vanilla.
Usually vanilla. Okay. Very good.
Or cookies and cream. Really anything. Caramel goes with anything really, but cookies and cream or vanilla.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, awesome. Well, Tracy, thanks so much for being here. We do appreciate it. So you've made the offer for folks to be able to reach out to you, say hello. Should they want to do that, how can they get in touch?
Well, I've got my Twitter account, so if you can spell Boggiano, you can find me very easily. Or you can go to my website, which is much easier to spell, databasesuperhero.com, which has links to my Twitter account and my email. And my email is just tracy@tracyboggiano.com.
Mr. Eugene?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SQLGene, despite it being bad for my mental health.
Mr. Kevin?
Apparently you won't find me on Twitter. So good luck.
Yeah. Okay, compañeros, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am at Carlos El Chacon. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again, Tracy, for being here. And compañeros, I hope to see you on the SQL Trail.
Data Partners.